Those of us who were in Israel at that momentous occasion will never forget the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, the Minister of External Affairs. Tonight, my great pleasure and honor to present to you Israel's great champion, the Honorable John Baird.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome. I want to thank Rabbi Alka for the kind introduction. I always start out a speech with a throwaway line. You don't really have to think about it. I almost start every speech with saying it's a pleasure to be here. It's not a pleasure to be here. I'm not happy to be here, and I'm not glad to be here, and I'm not glad that all of us, every single one of us, feels a need to come here, given the tragedy of recent days and recent weeks. I wish we could be here under much happier circumstances, as we have been in this very hall, on many celebrations and many great charitable causes. We gather here at the JCC to stand in solidarity with those who are living each day in terror for themselves and their family, and indeed their entire country. A culture of fear and terror has fallen on the state of Israel. We'll be here for 60, 90, or 120 minutes. And some hours, the Jewish state is under attack by 5 or 10 rockets. I don't like the term rocket. It sounds very antiseptic. It sounds like a spaceship. These are bombs. These are ammunition that are targeted against civilian populations. As the ambassador said, with one goal: to kill, to injure, and to wreak terror on people and their families. Can you imagine if we were in Sderot right now, and you were told you had 20 seconds to get to the bomb shelter? Or the luxury of one mother who told me her son feels so lucky that he's got 90 seconds because he's in Jerusalem. I want to tell you though, as I look around this room, and I know if I was in Toronto it would be the same, I am so incredibly impressed with the strength of this community. Once again, the community has come together with strength, with courage, with purpose, and most importantly, with unity. I want to tell you, it makes me so proud to be a Canadian. I want to tell you for a moment what also makes me proud to be a Canadian, and that's the courage and the leadership of our Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. From the first moment, not the second week, he has stood as an international leader on this issue, standing up for the Jewish state right to defend itself. Leadership in action. Now, some of you will know my grandfather, who was from Ottawa, was a great mentor to me in my life. He went to Europe in 1943 and then stayed in the Canadian Forces for 25 years. And as I said earlier, the great struggle of his generation at a young age, as a young man in his early 20s, was the fight against the menace that was fascism. And then throughout his time in the Canadian Forces, fighting communism. Well, the great struggle of our generation, from here to Israel, from Mumbai to Buenos Aires, from right around this world, is the great struggle against terrorism. And far too often, far too often, the Jewish people and the state of Israel are on the front lines of that great struggle. I've seen this firsthand in just about every place that I visited. I visited the community center in Buenos Aires that Rafi spoke about just a moment ago. And dozens and dozens and dozens of people were killed that day. Still no justice. I visited a Jewish center in Mumbai. It was still ripped apart, walls blackened from a bomb and from the fire, where it showed its face again. And about a year before, someone was killed outside of the Jewish Museum in Brussels. I had the occasion to visit there and to learn. These are places where the Jewish community has come under attack with deadly consequences. I've also seen it in Israel firsthand. The thing that disturbs me so greatly is when people, here at home or abroad, try to compare for a single moment the actions of a liberal democratic state with that of an international extremist terrorist organization like Hamas. There is no comparison, nor is there any room for moral relativism when it comes to terror in the state of Israel and Jewish. When I see editorials, political commentators, pundits, leaders around the world say, you know, both sides need to stop this violence. Both sides need to de-escalate. It's wrong. It's wrong. Hamas is a terrorist organization whose very purpose and raison d'etre and fundamental motivation is the destruction of the Jewish state of Israel. It has fired thousands of rockets, not at military installations, but at civilian populations. It started this conflict, and it is the one that has to stop it. There are absolutely no excuses for their reprehensible actions, and they must stop, period. When the new government of Egypt stepped in to try and stop the violence, I was absolutely stunned and pleased at how quickly the government of the state of Israel took up that offer to end the violence. For a brief moment, I was filled with optimism. I even asked my staff, I said, will they go ahead with this event on Wednesday night at the JCC? Well, we need to. Sadly, we're not here celebrating the end of a conflict, but we're looking at a terrible human crisis. Hamas, however, would have none of this ceasefire. What has Israel done? It is exercising its fundamental right to defend itself and its people. Do you know, I think liberal democratic states have one fundamental responsibility. It's not a right, it's a responsibility to protect their populations, to keep their people safe and secure. I wholeheartedly agree with Mark. If this happened in Canada, Canadians would have one single goal, one simple demand from their government, and that would be to make the rain of rockets stop, and stop immediately. But far too often, far too often, the Jewish state, Israel, is judged so differently by friends and those away. Israel doesn't just have the right to defend itself, it has an obligation. Hamas, in conducting this war of terror, and I wish you could measure the terror that's being instilled on the Israeli people. Jewish, Arab, Palestinian, the culture of fear that's developed, but you can't. Hamas is using civilian populations as shields in an attempt to further their terrorist causes. Imagine if you were a Palestinian family living next door or across the street from a Hamas terrorist who's launching rockets from their rooftop. Imagine if you showed up with your children to school one day, only to discover there was an arms cache in the school. Or if you were a nurse, you showed up, a Palestinian nurse, and you showed up to work to find out that Hamas was using the hospital as a staging ground or a launch pad. And I want to say this, it is tremendously interesting. There are a small number of terrorists in Sinai that are launching rockets. There's a lot from Gaza. There's some from South Lebanon. But there are no rockets coming from the West Bank. And that's because the IDF is there. But also because President Abbas and the Palestinian Authority increased their capacity on security, on their capacity to be able to build an institution for a future state. And Canadians can be very proud of that. Through our development assistance, we have worked incredibly hard to provide tangible and considerable support for the Palestinian Authority to build these institutions, and that has clearly paid off. While some in the media and elsewhere call us to be an honest broker, we are working with the Palestinian Authority to help them build a future state, one that is safe and secure with borders with the state of Israel. Another thing that angers me, and it wasn't from the Liberal Party one. Another party. I won't name names. Another party talked about this being a battle or a war between Israel and the Palestinians. And that is not true. This is a battle and a war against a liberal democracy against an international terrorist organization named Hamas. I have noted, I commend President Abbas for his clear rejection of Hamas's tactics. Canada will continue to support the Palestinian people on humanitarian issues, security, capacity building, and economic development. We all want a two-state solution where you have two peoples, Jewish peoples and Palestinians, living in peace and prosperity, and yes, security. When we look at quotes from around the world, that some political leaders don't seem to be as tough on Hamas as President Abbas, and that is unfortunate. Friends, these are incredibly challenging days for the people of Israel, and frankly for their friends and family everywhere. I know far too many of you in this room, whenever the phone rings, you're worried about is it a friend or family member who's in Tel Aviv, who's in Haifa, who's in Jerusalem. And you're worried about whether they're safe and whether they're secure. We will continue to work constructively with our Israeli friends and show them the support that they need, because that is why you have friends in this world, friends when you need them, friends for the tough days and not friends for the easy days. Thank you very much.